Brad, tree living in the Maple Leafs continue to wheel and deal ahead of free agency. Marner out the door. Why Maccelli in? What do we make the deals? And what's next for the Buds with free agency kicking off today at noon? You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And for all those who took my advice a few weeks back to log on to FanDuel, create an account, and place a $5 wager on Mitch Marner's next team as the Vegas Golden Knights, you can now cash that bet because that's exactly what happened on Monday. Mitch Marner, the saga ends. His era is over in Toronto. He is a Vegas Golden Knight, and boy, it was a wild few days here in Leafland. But how do we feel, Dave? How did the Marner situation unfold, and how you feeling about it? Marner era over in Toronto.
Yeah, I mean it's weird to kind of think that this is it, right? That Mitch Marner is no longer going to be a Maple Leaf. Technically, it's not official yet. The Leafs still have him,
it'll be official,
but it'll be official soon. Somebody's like, wonder if the Leafs would ever just be like, yeah, no, this ain't happening, Marner, you're staying. But no, they would not do that. No. Just pointing that out there. But yeah, it just kind of feels like in some ways, and I hear from a lot of people, I've heard the term good riddance in some ways, because I think they were just kind of getting tired of the whole saga and fiasco, right? Was Mitch going to stay? Was the Leafs going to try to keep him and all those things? But it's I guess bittersweet is probably the way I would describe it, right? You don't like losing a player like this, but at the same time, if people certainly want change and want the Leafs to try something different, this was one of the ways that we saw this as kind of the route that it was going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, one of those players had to go. And when you saw Tavares sign his extension, 4 years, 4.38, the writing was already on the wall that Marner was going to be gone anyway, but that really sealed fate. It's like, well, there's no chance in hell that this team's rolling it back with the same core four again. So we already had a 99% inkling that Marner was going to walk out the door, and basically that's exactly what happened. But at least they got something for him. Right, Dave? Like, he could have walked and done nothing. He didn't have to negotiate a deal with Vegas and get the sign and trade so that Toronto could get a player or some sort of asset out of the deal. They did get someone. They got Nicolas, who's a pretty solid, depth center. He can play third or fourth line center. However, it fits here in Toronto. Like, him and Scott Lawton kind of interchangeable as 3C and 4C, but he's a good player, penalty killer. He's a champion. He can play in those dirty areas. He's a strong on his skates. I like Nicolas, and he can toss in a little bit of offense. He had 40 points this past season, usually good for around 40 points. So, he's a good player, and he's obviously no Mitch Marner. That's for sure. And, if you look at this trade in the vacuum, you think Marner for what? Oh my God, they got absolutely smoked. How could that possibly be? Well, they got something, because if they would have waited 24 hours from from now, they would got nothing out of the deal. So not a whole lot of leverage for Toronto. So getting Wah was a decent return. At least they got someone who can be a critical part of this team's depth, which they had lacked in years. And clearly what we witnessed in the playoffs was depth is key. And Nicolas Wah, he's won a cup. He knows, he's been deep in the playoffs many times. He knows how to play playoff hockey. So bringing in a guy like that is definitely a decent return, all things considered. But you look at it, 8 years, $12 million. It's not a whole lot more money than he was making on his deal that he had prior, when he was with the Maple Leafs. He basically what $1.1 million per year increase on that deal. If you actually look at it in terms of cap percentage, it's actually making less cap percentage on this deal than he did 7 years ago when he signed that original contract.
Yeah, and I mean, people couldn't help but point out that where he is going to be making that money.
Yes.
Well,
More take home.
there'll be more take home on it as well. And just in a lot of ways, people I talk to say this is a reset, right? For him. Just, totally different scenario between what you would be like the situation in Vegas versus the situation in Toronto. Vegas on the ice, certainly the expectations similar to Toronto, but off the ice, I'm sure Mitch Marner is going to be. He will notice the difference right away about how he will be, how his life will be in Vegas than it will in Toronto, right? And in some ways, it probably was worth him taking the 12. And I'm sure Vegas went, Rantanen got 12. That's as much as we're going to give you.
Yeah. That's basically
take it.
Yeah. That's what happened. Could he have got more money elsewhere? Maybe. There's reports that, maybe Anaheim was willing to give him a little bit more than that, or maybe Columbus or Carolina. Like all those three teams have a lot of cap space and have had considerable interest in Mitch Marner for some time. But he wanted to go to Vegas. Vegas wanted him and had wanted him for a while. And now he goes off to Las Vegas, and we'll see how it pans out. I will be curious, right? Like we've always talked about how Marner just can't play here in this market. The pressure, he just puts too much pressure on himself, being the hometown kid, really wanting to bring the championship to the Leafs. And it ended up getting in his own head. He turned out to play against him instead of using it to fuel him favorably. I'll be curious to see, now that he's out of Toronto and in a different environment, will he unlock something? And honestly, I don't think I'll be upset if he does. Like, I know there's a big segment of Leaf fans that are like, watch, now he's going to go off and he'll win a Conn Smythe and bring Vegas to a championship, and he'll turn into that superstar playoff player that he is in the regular season now that he's gone from Toronto. And that may be the case. That very well may be the case. But I don't think that was ever going to happen here in Toronto. So to me, this was a must split, Marner and Toronto, and it may work out better for Marner than it does for the Leafs. That's going to be a very difficult player to replace. And based on all the contracts that got signed earlier today as well, it doesn't sound like there's a big time top line winger walking in that door. No Brad Marchand. He re-upped in Florida. Same with Aaron Ekblad. There was a lot of guys who ended up re-signing, and free agency is much more bleak than it looked like it was going to be a week ago. Marner was the top dog, followed by Marshy, Ekblad, Bennett. All four of those guys are now signed and staying with their teams. So there's not a whole lot out there to replace Mitch Marner, but you can get a different mix and you can build out the depth, and you can bring in a guy like Wah, who maybe he is your fourth line center, but when you're not paying Mitch Marner $12 million, you can maybe pay a 4C $3 million, and then you could pay, a second line winger $6 million, $7 million instead of paying one guy 12. So we'll see how it looks, what the mix is, and what they do with that money, the space that is now there without Mitch Marner. But I am curious, Dave, when we look forward, or more so when we look backwards, like, what to you will be the legacy of Mitch Marner here in Toronto?
A dynamic player, someone I think different than what the Leafs had, but one that certainly saw his reputation kind of take a turn for the worse for himself after, trying to earn a good payday for himself, but not enduring himself too well with the fan base because of how public all that stuff got, right? Like, good player, but the perception of him, just the PR stuff around it, will always, I think, kind of haunt him a bit. And it will, every time he comes here. Well, maybe the first time. We'll see how it comes. Him only coming once a year now, I'm certain won't have the same effect as if he had gone and signed with a team in the Eastern Conference.
So that was going to be my next question. Like, you think he ends up with like the Tavares on Long Island treatment after this? I don't know if he gets it that bad,
No.
I think a lot of Leaf fans were ready for him to go. But I think that they're still going to boo him because of how sour it was, though. I still think he's going to get booed. Like, he is totally going to be
Yep.
booed the first time he gets to Toronto, whether players wanted or fans wanted him gone or not. I think that there's going to be a lot of boo birds out there. To me, I look at his legacy, and it's twofold. I think you're right when you look at how he dealt with the media a lot of the time. Like, he was pretty snippy, but more so, I think fans are just going to remember great regular season player, could never get it done in the playoffs. When the going got tough, when they needed him most, he just couldn't muster up any amount of offense to get it done when it mattered. Like those stats, games 4 through 7, like they're disgusting. Those elimination games, like 6 elimination games or 6 game sevens, 7 game sevens, whatever it is, and he's got 2 points in those games, no goals. So that's what I think he'll always be remembered by. Regular season darling, playoff failure. That's what you'll always kind of remember Mitch Marner for as long as he's a Maple Leaf. And I saw some discourse online about whether or not, like, eventually, do you see them retiring 16? Like he's up there. He's got a lot of points. He's top 10 in top 10 in points, top 5 in assists. Like, is this a player who might get his number retired one day? Absolutely not. I don't think that we should ever see 16 go up into the rafters, just not just because of the way that it ended, but like they didn't win anything. Like, what are we celebrating when Mitch Marner goes up? Yeah, he made a lot of money and got a lot of assists. That's not worthy of number retirement, if you ask me. So I'm prepared to put that to bed. His legacy is not nearly strong enough where that will warrant any type of number retirement ceremony in the future. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, no. I think for Marner, that's really it, and that's going to be a reputation he's going to have to work to shed in Vegas, right? He, in a lot of ways, maybe the Vegas mantra of like the misfits, right? The guys who, were kind of castaways from their teams because they felt they weren't in some ways not worthy of keeping. Maybe he embodies that a little bit, but yeah, he's got a reputation he's going to have to shed. And I'm sure there's like that baggage will weigh for a bit, but I mean, Vegas is probably a good spot for him to try to turn that narrative around because a lot of players have done that in Vegas.
Well, I'll be curious to see how it works out with him and Bruce Cassidy, because Bruce Cassidy lost his job at Boston because they lost the room because reports were that players were unhappy with how hard he was on them. Again, just reports, but if I don't know how that relationship is going to work with him and Marner. If Marner thinks that he can, do his little spinorama backhand sauces in a playoff game, that's not going to fly in Vegas. That's not going to fly under Bruce Cassidy. That's for sure. So I'll be curious to see how it all works out. I honestly, if I had to pick now, I would say Marner probably going to have success in Vegas. I do think that there is going to be some success there. I think the change of scenery, the lack of pressure in Vegas compared to Toronto, mainly because they've won before. Like, they know how to get it done, and there's guys around him who've done it, and he's not going to be leaned on to be the main guy. Like, sure, he's paid the most, but I think they're not going to say he has to lead us. Like, Jack Eichel's there for that, right? Like, other guys are there to do that. But I think that it'll be okay for Marner. And I think the Maple Leafs, they might be okay too. They made a couple of deals to try and round out the depth of this squad. So they lost a star, but they added a couple of depth pieces ahead of free agency, and they'll look to add some more once free agency begins today at 12 o'clock. So we'll put the Marner stuff on the back burner for now because there's a lot to get into today. We can continue to talk about Marner, his legacy, and what this means for the Maple Leafs and his future later on in the week. But let's come back and chat about the new players acquired by the Maple Leafs. Nicolas and Matias Maccelli, new players brought in by Brad Treliving today. So we'll come back, get into that, and then it's free agency, Dave. It is free agent frenzy today. Let the frenzy begin starting at noon. We've got a couple players of interest for the Maple Leafs that we'll both tell you about. So that's coming up next in the Locked On Leafs podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are out getting sunburned at the beach. I'm using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups. The app keeps it fresh, and with fresh new daily promotions, it makes it lots of fun. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you find us also up on YouTube as well. Locked On Leafs. Hit subscribe. Daily content comes straight to you all summer long. And today's the biggest event of the summer when it comes to hockey. It's free agent frenzy, July 1st, which means there are tons of players who will be swapping teams, and I'm sure the Maple Leafs will be right in the mix. But they definitely went ahead and added to their depth, at least through the trade market the day before free agency, adding two players, Nicolas, who had previously mentioned, who was a return for Mitch Marner in that sign and trade. And then they also made a deal for Matias Maccelli. They gave up a conditional 2027 third-round pick for Maccelli that can turn into a second-round pick if he gets 51 points and the Maple Leafs make the playoffs. He's got 1 year left on his deal at $3.45 million, and then he's an RFA when that extends, so he does have control after this. Just 24 years old. He'll be 25 by the time the season starts. But Matias Maccelli, a buy low option coming off of a bit of a poor season. But his first 2 years in the league, Dave, pretty good. I like the swing by Brad Treliving and the Maple Leafs to add someone who could probably move right up into that top six. He doesn't quite take over, and he's not going to be a Mitch Marner replacement, but he can give you some of that Marner playmaking ability that will be sorely missed.
I think that's the big one there, right? Is he fills a need that you have, right? Well, you got guys that could put the puck in the net, but it's also who's going to get them that puck.
Right.
Who's going to be the setup man in a lot of ways. And you need guys that are going to be able to do that. So this is why, I do like this addition. I at first, when I saw the numbers for this year, I'm like, not great. I'm like, well, consider how many games he played. Look at what he had done the years before that. Right. And I think that's something that needs to be considered, right? He kind of fell out of favor there in Utah. He was
averaging 2 minutes less per game, and he was averaging like 40 seconds less of power play time. So he had moved off of the top power play, and he was playing fourth line minutes, basically, for the Utah Mammoth. He had just 18 points in 55 games this year, playing just 13 minutes a night. But the 2 seasons prior, Dave, 106 points in 146 games. And that was his first 2 full seasons in the NHL. He's only had 3 full years in the NHL. 2 were pretty good. And then last year, in a down year. But that's why it's a buy low option. It costs you a third-round pick. And if he turns out to be a decent player and he can get you 50 plus points and help contribute, get this team into a playoff spot, it's well worth a future second, I would say. And you still have control of this player. You have an opportunity to see if he can be something. But if you got yourself a 50 to 60 point winger and you only gave up a third, possibly second round pick, well worth it, in my opinion.
That's it, right? He's, in my opinion, probably is going to be well worth it because you don't really have that on your roster. I think maybe the closest comparable in terms of playmaking ability is probably Max Domi, right?
Yeah.
So
well, that's the thing. Like Maccelli, realistically, if you're trying to fill out the roster right now before even free agency hits, like you probably would have one of those guys on each line in the top 6. Like right now, if I'm filling out my lineup card before free agency, like sure, they could add a Nick Ehlers or add a Brock Boeser and things could change. But right now, you probably got what? Nyes, Matthews, Domi, and then I guess Maccelli, Tavares, and Nylander. So you've got Domi as the playmaker on that top line, and you've got Maccelli as the playmaker, trying to get the puck over to Nylander on that second line. Like, you kind of have your top six figured out before you even go into free agency.
Yeah, if that's the way they and you want that, right? You don't want to have to be wondering what is going to be your option there in that spot. You kind of want your top six sort of figured out. Yeah, it would be nice if you can go and add players, but like you look, a lot of the guys are not there anymore that you thought you could potentially add as top six options, right? Marchand, he gone. Patrick Kane, he gone, right? Like as soon as you started seeing these guys going, it's like, okay, now we can kind of understand why Brad decided to go down this route and add a guy like Maccelli. As you said, the cost, third round pick that turns it's a conditional second rounder if he gets. I can't remember what the points he had.
51 points, and the Maple Leafs make the playoffs.
Right, and it's a 2029 second round pick. Like we're not talking about a pick that's going to happen for a while now. So you'll stomach with that, giving up that if you can get a top six, if you can get top six production out of Maccelli.
Yeah, I'll give up a second round pick for a top six player all day. Now he has to, revert back to what he was, right? Like I he's only 24. He'll be 25 by the time, next season rolls around, but he's only entering his prime, right? Like he's just entering that prime right now. So if he can get back to what he was 2 years ago, I think that's when you're going to be in a good spot. Like you look at those first 2 seasons in the NHL for Maccelli, like I said, 106 points in 146 games. That's 0.72 points per game. And if you look at the players who ranked in and around that point per game mark this year, the name is these are the names that were in that range: Evgeny Malkin, Marco Rossi, Bo Horvat, Vincent Trocheck, Brad Marchand, Brock Boeser. Those are the type of names that were this year were in that 0.72 points per game range. And that's where he was for the first 2 years in the NHL prior to last season. So if he can get back to that, you definitely got yourself a nice little score. And if he gets the minutes, being up in the top six, gets those opportunities, whether or not he gets a chance on the top power play remains to be seen, but certainly second power play minutes as kind of that passer, that feeder out there in the second power play. I like the bet. I think it's a good bet for the Maple Leafs. And, it's, as someone said, he's kind of like a Dollar Tree Marner. Like maybe that could be, I guess what he is, but he's known very much for a great vision on the ice and good playmaking abilities. And that's kind of what the Leafs need at this point, right? With Marner going out the door, they need to replace that vision and that playmaking from the wing position. And Matias Maccelli can do that. He can play both the left and the right wing, by the way. He's a left shot, but he can play both sides. So that obviously helps when you have that type of flexibility to play both angles. The other player that the Maple Leafs picked up and will insert into their lineup once this Marner trade goes through is Nicolas, who, he another player who has won a championship. He'll be depth, third, fourth line center, whatever you want to call it. He could technically push over to the wing as well, but very reliable two-way guy, very reliable to zone end. He's been a top-notch penalty killer for years. He plays in those hard areas. He competes. He's a big body, and I like what Nicolas brings. I've always thought that Waugh was one of the best fourth-line centers in the league, and you bring that to Toronto. I think they've got something down the middle now with Matthews, Tavares, Lawton, Waugh, or Waugh-Lawton, however you want to slice it up down the middle. You've got some depth there, and you've got 4 capable centers who you trust in the defensive zone. So I really like that pickup and being able to get him for Marner's rights, essentially. Not a bad little consolation when the alternative was getting nothing for Mitch Marner.
Yeah, it's not the sexiest return, right? Yeah. But what we said was a problem last year for Tavares and Matthews? They were playing too much in the defensive, situations.
Right.
You wonder why Austin Matthews maybe didn't have the season. He obviously with the injury, but what was maybe part of the injury? Maybe it was him being forced to play more of those hard minutes that you don't want to be usually playing your superstar player. Yes, you can use in defense. I'm not saying don't, but get other guys to contribute. Play the guys that are capable of doing it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what Nicolas Roy does.
Yeah, especially if you're gonna have a guy like Max Domi playing on your top line and Matias Maccelli playing on your top line, like those guys aren't big dudes. They're not those great. They're not as good defensively as a Mitch Marner is. So you want to protect them a little bit. So it'd be nice if they can get all the offensive starts, right? Offensive zone starts, and you can rely on your third and fourth lines to start in the D zone. The other thing that I like about Nicolas, he's a center, right? He's also a right shot. How often have we talked about the Leafs' lack of right shot centerman, someone who's on the right side that can come in and take a situational faceoff? Now Nicolas can do that. So that's another thing to like about him. The fact that he is, big boy, 6'4", 200 pounds, can play down the middle of the ice, can play on the wing, but he's also a right shot. He's making $3 million this season, and then he's a UFA next year, I believe, right? This is his final. Yeah, he's in his no. Actually, he's got 2 more years left on his deal. I apologize.
He's not on the final year of his deal. He has 2 years. So,
yeah, so
2 years. That's valuable with the cap going up. That $3 million. There's some people like $3 million. That's going to be nothing next year, right?
No.
And you get somebody like this is why, yes, the Lawton deal right now wasn't looking so good, but you get another crack at it with him. Him coming in at training camp, right? And he'll have a more defined role than Craig Brewery trying to figure out where the heck to put him.
Right.
The same is going to go with Nick Waugh, right? He's going to, I think you guarantee Treliving and Berube know exactly what they want Waugh to do. And yes, as good as he is defensively, he can still chip in offense, right?
Yeah.
For what he is.
He had 31 points this year, but last year at 41 points, right? 15 goals this past season, tied a career high, 15 goals. So he's good for 13 to 15 goals every year. That's pretty much what he's good for. And that's what you need out of your bottom six, right? If you can get me 15 goals out of my third, fourth line center, or a third line winger, wherever he ends up playing, you like that. You like what he could do for you there. So, yeah, I think this is a good pickup. Again, just adding to the depth. We always knew that Marner wasn't going to be a 1-for-1. It had to be by committee. And now all of a sudden you take a look, okay, how do we replace those numbers from Mitch Marner? All right, well, you get 30 points from Waugh, you get 50 or so from Matias Maccelli. Tomorrow later today when free agency kicks off, they'll probably sign another depth player or a middle six player or top 9 player or so that'll make up the difference with another 40, 50 points or so. And all of a sudden, okay, we've replaced those numbers. Maybe you get a little internal growth from Matthew Nye is going into year number 4, or you've got or year 3. Maybe Domi, who had a kind of a down year, picks it up. Calle Yarncroc can, give you some offense. Steven Lorentz, who got re-signed in his back, maybe he gives you a little bit more, if he's playing with better players like a Nicolas Waugh instead of a David Kampf, who, offense dies on that guy's stick. At least you can get some offense out of Nick Waugh and Scott Lawton, whoever is going to be playing on the fourth line. So I like it. I think the Leafs are building out their team down the middle, and they're doing it with guys who can play, who can compete, who have size. And I think that's the way to do it in the modern NHL. You saw how, the Florida Panthers have won back-to-back Stanley Cup championships. They're big, they can skate, they're mean, and they're very, very good down the middle of the ice. Very deep team as well. So Toronto and the rest of the league, it's kind of a copycat mimic type of league. And that's kind of what they're doing. And that's what they're doing by adding a guy like Nick Waugh, and we'll see what they can get out of Matias Maccelli. But I think those are 2 very good additions to this forward group to start. But there's more to be done. I think we both agree there is more to be done. And why don't we come back and talk a little bit about what's next for the Maple Leafs? They got right now about $6 million in cap. They can finagle the numbers, make some trades, maybe get a little bit more than that, but they've got a little bit of money to work with in free agency. Let's talk a little bit about who maybe they should be targeting when it all kicks off at noon Eastern today. So we'll get to that next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as always, like we are each and every Monday through Friday, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. It's all Leafs all the time. And the 5 p.m. RFA qualifier deadline was today at 5 p.m. or yesterday at 5 p.m. And the Maple Leafs did tender a lot of their players. A lot of them got some qualifying offers, and we'll figure out, contracts down the road. There's a couple guys with some RFA or with some, what do they call it? The arbitration rights. So that'll get dealt with at some point. One surprise non-tender, though, for the Maple Leafs, and someone who will have an opportunity to go elsewhere, who is technically now a free agent, Pontus Holmberg. That one surprised me, Dave. Not seeing Pontus Holmberg qualified was definitely a bit of an eyebrow raiser for me. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised just because I thought it just seemed like he was someone that Craig Berube liked, in certain situations.
Top six Pontus, and all of a sudden now he can't crack your lineup? What?
Like he's the one that doesn't get qualified. And part of me wonders, does this have to do with arbitration, right? It always
Sounds
seems
like
if you give Pontus Holmberg the qualifying offer, he could just simply say, all right, we're going to go to arbitration. We'll let the arbitrator give me a good deal.
But what could they possibly give him? Like, what did Pontus Holmberg do last year? I'm just going to quickly take a look before I shoot out my mouth. But, did he have more than, 30 points? What do you have last year? 27 points. Yeah. He had 27 points a year ago, 18 the year before that. What could he possibly ask for that would be considered too high?
I don't even know what the qualifying offer would have been for him. That's the other thing I don't know.
Well, the qualifying offer would have been what he made last year, which was 800,000, I think, 850, whatever it is, very low. It's not the qualifying offer was going to be something. It was the threat of what the arbitration number could be. And we've seen that around the league where some teams don't want to go to arbitration with the players because of what it could end up being. And they end up just, letting those players walk despite them still being decent players, but maybe not worthy of taking the bet with an arbitrator. And it seems like Pontus Holmberg has himself in that situation. But again, I'm just not really sure what an arbitrator would have awarded Pontus Holmberg. 26 years old, he's played parts of 3 years in the league. This was really his first full season in the NHL this year. It's the first time he never, ever, had spent time in the AHL. I don't know if he really would have got a contract for much more than $1 million. Steven Lorentz. Steven Lorentz was just as much a contributor, I guess. Sure, the points weren't there, but he's just as much as a regular role depth NHLer as Holmberg. He made what, 135, 1375? Could Pontus really have made that much more? Kind of perplexed. I don't know. Surprised me a little bit. Not that it's not that Holmberg is irreplaceable. Don't get me wrong. He's a depth option on this team, and now he can't play in your top six. So I guess that's kind of a good thing that that toy's been taken away from Berube. But it just kind of did surprise me that the Leafs just weren't even willing to extend the qualifying offer and see if they can figure out a deal before arbitration.
And maybe there's a possibility he could get signed.
Yeah, that happened.
That's possible. But you know what? You're talking about changing the mix. You need guys who, you love the tenacity, you like his ability to draw penalties, but you also like a guy who could once in a while pot a couple goals. Yeah. Right. And there's guys in free agency.
Pontus Holmberg was Mitch Marner's favorite player. Is that why they let him go? Because he was Marner's favorite player? They're just let's just get rid of both of them. Remember he was asked about that? Holmberg had a sick goal. I will say he's got a decent highlight reel. I will say that. And maybe that's what they were going to just play the highlight reel in the ARB case and be like, see, look, I'm basically Patrick Kane, and get a bunch of money. But I don't know. It's kind of an odd No, sorry, he didn't have 27 points. He had 27 penalty minutes. He only had 19 points. Yeah, he had 19 points, 7 goals, 12 assists,
It's not getting any better for you, bud. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he had more PIMs than points. He had 1 assist in 12 playoff games. What the hell? Like, what is an arbitration?
I kept saying for the longest time this guy should be shadow banished, not only from the lineup but from the top 6. Like, it was an insult.
I know
that man was in the top 6.
I know,
and it just screams to me. Is like, anybody complaining about any of the additions coming in right now? Think about what the options were. They had put Pontus Holmberg in the top 6. He, of 19 points in the regular season, got top 6 minutes in the playoffs.
Yeah, actually, Steven Lorentz outpaced him. Steven Lorentz had 8 goals and same amount of points, 19 points, but Lorentz had more goals scored than Pontus Holmberg. I will say. Jake McCabe had more points also than Pontus Holmberg did. So that just goes to show there's not a lot there. It's not a big loss for the Leafs, I suppose. So we don't even need to continue to talk about it. But it's notable that the only name of significance that did not receive a qualifying offer from the Leafs was Pontus Holmberg. A little surprised that Nick Robertson received one. I don't know. I guess I shouldn't be. He did score 15 goals last year.
Maybe they figure they can get something out of him in a trade. Maybe
they've tried that every year. Like, is he just going to take a 6th-round pick finally? Like, is he finally just going to take whatever he can get now, or is he just going to let Nicky Bobby sit up in the press box and bring him in every 4 games, score a quick goal, and then go back in the press box? Like, is that? I don't know. That one surprised me a little. I guess
the guy had 15 goals last year, and he was.
I know, but he only played 3 games in the playoffs.
I know.
What are you building your team for? To compete in the playoffs?
Yeah.
And Berube has told you, Keefe has told you, time and time again, this guy isn't a playoff performer, and they don't trust him in the postseason. Why bother having him on your roster? I don't know. Anyways, that was one other thing that did kind of interest me, I suppose. Anyways, the Leafs will have, like, as of now, they got $6.6 million. They can open up a bit more by waiving Ryan Reeves, possibly trade David Kampf, who's a little redundant now, if with the addition of Nicolas, and maybe get someone cheaper who could be a depth center option. Even Steven Lorentz could be a depth center option. So maybe you can even open up closer to 10 million if you get rid of those 2 players off your roster. What players should the Maple Leafs be targeting in free agency when the festivities kick off at noon? Like, what holes are left to be filled, and who could fill those holes, I suppose, is maybe the way we could.
Well, I like to see, is Max Pacioretty going to come back, right? There was talks that they were going to look to bring him back. I think based on
where does he fit? Where does he fit now?
Well, you know that he's going to be on the wing somewhere. I think top 6 is out of the question, but I do think third line, he could be on the wing, right? You could have a third line with him, Wah, and then maybe somebody else on that wing. If you have, let's say, like a Pacioretty, McMahon, Wah as your third line.
So right now, like Puckpedia, whatever, they have their depth chart. They got a third line of McMahon, Lawton, and Calle Jarnkrok. Is their third line as of now?
Right, like that to me. Well, I mean, that's also because Wah. I guess Wah is Wah.
Yeah, Wah's not there yet. So, like, you could even, like, if you move Wah to the wing, you could even have McMahon, Lawton, and Wah. Like, that is a possibility.
I think, like, the thing with Pacioretty too is you don't want to overdo it with him as well. Like, expect him to play all 82 games, right?
He's not.
Like,
bring him back as a depth option, I suppose. But like, that's not the first guy I'm looking at. That's the first guy you're looking at.
No. It's not the first guy. To me, the first guy. I mean, I've just heard so much about Andrew Mangiapane.
Yeah,
it just kind of feels like, that's one guy that they could bring in, and he can play the penalty kill. He can play in your middle 6, and provide you some offense. Offense is going to be the big one. They struggle to score, especially in the bottom 6. Go get guys are going to be able to do that. Andrew Mangiapane is probably one of those guys that you can get in your. It's not going to cost you as much.
435 goal scorer Andrew Mangiapane, I might add.
Right? Sure,
Yeah.
somebody that Craig Berube knows that Brad Treliving knows well.
Yeah.
Should hopefully thrive under Craig Berube too. He's played under tough coaches in Calgary, so like I don't think that would try. Like, and he's a local kid, right?
Yep.
Bring
Yep.
him home.
Maybe he takes a bit of a discount. Maybe it's a 1-year prove it deal coming off a down season.
Yeah,
Like last year,
29 years old, right?
He had just 14 last year, I think, with Washington, 14 goals, 28 points. It's not a Mangiapane-esque year. He's usually, closer in the 40-point range, and the 1-year outlier season, but he did have 35 goals in an elevated role with the Calgary Flames one season. So if he can get that type of role with the Maple Leafs, possibly he could find that magic again and maybe be, like a Zach Hyman-esque player. Like he's kind of like a Hyman-esque player. I like him a lot, whether he's just as a top 9 guy who, if injury occurs, can move up and down your lineup. I do like him. I think he should be the number 1 target. And there's the obvious relationship built between him and Brad Treliving. So, yeah, I'm with you. That is, to me, should be the Maple Leafs' number 1 target at this point. And I don't care where he could play anywhere in the top 9. Like, realistically, any wing position in the top 9. So you just continue to add to that depth on the wing and a little bit of scoring depth. But it's interesting because, again, they'll have money to spend. They will have money to spend. Like, they can have basically up to $10 million is what they seemingly will be able to spend. So they could afford one of those big boys like a Brock Boeser or a Nick Ehlers. Do you think they get into that market? Granlund, you could put Mikael Granlund into that market as well. That guy's more of like a number 2 center. But like, do you think they go big buck hunting for one of those top players, or was it like Marchand was the only player they were willing to really spend big on, and now maybe they just focus more on depth?
I'm sure they're gonna maybe just check in, see what the offers are looking like, but I doubt that they're gonna want to do that. Like, don't get caught giving a bad. No, I wouldn't say it would be bad to sign Boeser or Ehlers, but you gotta be careful.
What's the number? What's the number that makes sense for those two? You think?
Like Ehlers, he's gonna get more than 8, but I wouldn't give him more than 8 million a year. Like, even Boeser too, like 7 for him would be, because he's a very one-dimensional player, goal scorer, not very fast, not the best skater, I would say, but he can score goals.
Nikolaj Ehlers, the contract projection from The Athletic, 6 years, 8.1 million. So 8.1 for Ehlers. Brock Boeser, his is 6 years, 8.4 million for Brock Boeser. So the projection there is, so basically, if you're giving up 8 million for one of those two, I don't think they do. Mikael Granlund, they're projecting a 2-year deal at 4.9. He's 33 years old, so he's getting up there. But he is coming off a 66-point season, played almost 20 minutes a night. Very, very good contributor with the Dallas Stars, who are a playoff team, and he did well for them. So Granlund's an interesting possibility. I think of the 3, that might be the one that I think they show the most interest in. But I think it's pretty well depth, and there's some good depth out there. I think Brandon Tanev would be an interesting player if they want to add to that, big hulking mean depth winger arsenal, right? Tanev brings a little bit of offense, and obviously brother of Chris Tanev. You reunite those two together. Luke Cunnin is a name that always gets brought up with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's a big boy, right winger, so he can play the right side, right shot. Justin Brazeau, do you bring that guy back into the fold? 6'5", 240 pounds. Tanner Jeannot is a free agent. He's a big boy who can drop the mitts too, and he did show the ability to score early in his career. Hasn't done a whole lot recently. And an interesting player that was not qualified that does have a connection with Brad Treliving, Jacob Pelletier. The size, he's a little undersized, but he's a little bit, he's like an Energizer bunny. He is kind of like a Hyman, Michael Bunting type of guy. So Pelletier would be a very interesting player as well for me if you're looking for like a young
Here's also
player to take
one
a
other.
shot on.
There's also one other name that Pierre LeBrun put out. I mean, it's not the sexiest name, but Michael Pizzetta,
Yep.
someone who's got a
Possibly.
little guy who's just willing to just do whatever it takes to win. Right, very tenacious player, not the flashiest player, but just kind of has that like grit
He'll
to
take a
him.
punch. He'll take a punch in the face. That's for sure. He'll take a hit to make a play. Not a lot of offense though. Not a
No,
lot of offense. Some of these other guys, there's offense there.
but he's a big boy. He's got some size to him, which
He's a big boy.
you'll take some of that. But yeah, like he's not a guy you're like if it's on. I wouldn't say Ryan Reeves that's because he's 27. He's not over the hill, but I'm sure maybe Toronto kid maybe wants even on a. I don't know if he'll get a contract, maybe even a PTO offer at one point if he doesn't get a deal.
Maybe could be there. I think too they're probably in the market for a depth defenseman, someone to come in and compete for a third pair, seventh defenseman type spot. Jan Ruta is a name that I'll throw out there. He's just a winner, a couple cups won with Tampa Bay, and he played really well next to Victor Hedman. He's not the same player he was, obviously, but he was in San Jose. So, like, what do you really know about Jan Ruta when he was withering away in San Jose for the last couple of years? I'm not sure. So that's one name that I think is interesting. And my dark horse, I brought this up a week ago on the podcast, but what about a guy like Brent Burns? Bringing him in, third pair defender, give him, make him a road for a power play guy. They need a power play guy, and like Burnsy might he still can kind of sling it a little bit. So that's just a bit of a wild card if they can get him on a super cheap deal. I think I saw his what's his projection on the Athletic. It's a little higher than I'm willing to go, to be completely honest with you. Nate Schmidt's a name too that I would keep in mind. Just won a championship with Florida.
He might be
in
an
mind
one though.
Connor Brown, maybe. I think they only the Athletics only projecting him. I think it was like 2.9 million or something. It's like 3 million. Yeah, not too bad. Connor Brown, even not a whole lot for Connor Brown. 2.9 on Connor Brown.
Very versatile player. He might even take a little less to come to. I mean, actually, he probably wouldn't take less because I think he'll have suitors. He's going to test the market like the Oilers try, but there's just not for a guy like him. It's just like let me like would like to go back to the Oilers, but like give me something, guys. Like
Burns. They're projecting 1 year 5.3 for Brent Burns. Probably not going to Toronto. Yeah, no. I'm not taking that shot. Yeah, probably not. He's still. I played 21 minutes a night last year for Carolina. Still played almost 21 minutes a night. Only 29 points though, just 6 goals. So the numbers started to dip a little bit, I suppose. He's 40 years old now. Yeah, not at 5 million, but like 2 million. I'd take a shot at Brent Burns at $2 million, but that might be a little low for him when it comes to that. But I'm excited, man. I love free agency and obviously the speculation out there. It sounds like the Leafs are in on a lot of players. Brad Treliving is a guy who's always going to be making phone calls, checking in on guys. So I think I think there'll be some things to report when we come back for tomorrow's show to recap day one of free agency. There's still a lot more to get into of what we discussed about Mitch Marner and Tavares and whether or not the DNA has been changed and what these new players can bring to the Leafs. So there'll be a lot to get into over the next couple of weeks. But the next couple of days, full free agent talk as the frenzy begins today at noon. We'll see what the Maple Leafs can do. All right, Dave, we'll leave it there. Thanks everyone for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. Enjoy free agency. We'll recap day one tomorrow. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.